What do you think are the core skill sets someone should really have if they wanted to step into the GTM engineering role?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say the three primary ones that stand out to me are one, just being able to learn these new things that are possible, right? Because there is no material per se out there that tells you this is how you have to use it. It's still a skill set that is being developed. So just innate curiosity and just like having that mindset to learn newer things and executing upon them, right? That I would say is a starting point. And the other things that are fairly important is some amount of technical know-how. That does not necessarily mean that you need to know how to code, right? But a lot of times, what you're doing as a GTM engineer is interacting with multiple data sources, right? And the only way you can do that is, let's say, using some API to connect one tool with another. So that amount of understanding, which now is fairly easier to get also using ChatGPT, uh, or any LLM for that matter, is one of the other things that is fairly important. The third one I would say is systems thinking, right? Because what you're building as a GTM engineer are systems that once you have built them, just keep on running by themselves and drive results. So those are the three primary skill set I would say. Again, basically growth mindset, the ability, the technical know-how of how to use some of these data sources and stitch them together, and systems thinking in terms of building something that keeps on executing by itself and delivers results. Those would be the three primary ones for me.
Got it. Thanks for explaining that, Katie. Very articulate there. Let's talk about tooling. There are so many different AI driven tools out there like Clay, Apollo, Salesloft. Where should a GTM engineer really start? What's the must have tech stack for them?
Yeah, I would say, so for me, the bifurcation, let's again, I'm going to talk about the outbound use case specifically, and then I'm going to talk about like a few other things that are now possible in terms of the tools that you should pay focus to at the moment. So, in terms of outbound, right, the primary things you can look at the entire thing into four buckets. So, list building, research, copywriting, and sequencing, right? Let's say those are the four buckets. In list building, you're essentially looking at where to find the right kind of companies and people, right? Apollo is still a place that you should be aware of because they have such a large data set. Or you can use something like Sales Navigator. All of these are traditional tools, right? You will already be using something like Apollo or Sales Navigator. For research, now what is possible is you can tap into some of these new data sources that was not possible. So you can look at somebody's website using a large language model. Now, how do you do that? For you to analyze the data on your prospect's website, now you need like a new age tool like Clay. So Clay is essentially like a base layer that you need, uh, either Clay or something like Cargo, but you do need like a base layer of workflow automation. And then you can use different data sources to connect within Clay. So for list building, you can have Apollo Sales Navigator. For research, you can use a large language model to pass through websites, or you can get somebody's LinkedIn post to research them further. You can see what they've posted about. For copywriting, there is a specific tool which only does copywriting called Twain, or you can use Anthropic for copywriting within Clay. And for sequencing, the two or three primary ones for email that everybody uses at the moment is performing great is Instantly or Smartly for email. And for LinkedIn, people use HeyReach primarily. Or if you want to use something that does both LinkedIn and email, La Growth Machine and Lemlist are the choices, right? So this is spread across four different buckets, but the base layer of tying everything together is still Clay
Got it.
or something like Clay. Yeah.
So many different tools. I've actually added links to all of these in the show notes, guys. So please feel free to look at it then. Thank you, Katie, for actually sharing that entire list. You spoke a bunch about Clay. Could you give us a quick overview of what it does, why it's so powerful? And I know you have a demo for us as well. So excited to dive into that after that.
Absolutely right. So I quite like their positioning, how they frame their own position. I quite like that. So I'm just going to borrow that. Uh, the idea for us to understand why Clay is so great, right? A parallel that can be drawn is in terms of writing code. So earlier, before we had integrated development environment like VS Code, right? People used to write code in one place, test code in another place, or debug code in another place. But IDE, what it allowed was bringing all of this together into one place and not have like distributed siloed processes, right? But something like that never existed for GTM teams. You people traditionally, or even still, are still looking at companies and people in databases like Apollo, exporting that as a CSV, uploading that into their HubSpot or another CRM, building a sequence of emails there using templating and still sending out through their primary domains. All of this is so siloed and distributed that the entire bandwidth of a team, a significant portion of the bandwidth of the team is spent in basically managing all of these broken processes. So, what was IDE for engineers is Clay for GTM folks, because now you can connect all of these data sources in different steps of the workflow into one place, stitch everything together, and then just run things from Clay itself.